Coming to you from the city of the weird. Exploring topics from the esoteric and unexplored to dimensions unknown. Shining a light of truth on the darkest corners of our reality. Welcome to the Curious Realm. Well, hello everybody, and happy Tuesday night. Happy Harvest Moon. We have a full moon, harvest moon lunar eclipse tonight that should be starting here in about an hour. So at the mid-show break, make sure to go out and take a look up. We should have a beautiful prenumbral eclipse tonight. I don't think it's a total lunar eclipse, but as an astrophotography fan, my eyes will be skyward at the break. So we have a great show lined up for you tonight. In the second part, we will be joined by Mike Turber from 5x5 News. We will be talking all things Boeing, specifically the Boeing whistleblowers, the two that ended up dead, the 100 more that there are, literally 100 whistleblowers coming out from Boeing. So yeah, what is the fate of that contractor? What's the fate of the Starliner? What is the fate of the two astronauts who were like, yeah, I think I'll skip the ride home in the Starliner. Thanks though. Even though NASA was like, oh, it was perfectly all right. They could have ridden home in it. It's like, yeah, you ride home in it, bro. Like, heck no, man. I'm sorry. That is a ticket I do not accept. I will now have like the second longest history in the ISS, whatever, you know, but keep sending the tang up, because I ain't coming home till I have a solid ride back. So we're going to be getting into that with Mike Turber, and he texted me earlier talking about all this stuff that's going on with the exploding pagers that's going on with Hezbollah right now. Apparently this was something that was figured out long ago and never actively used. So interesting. We'll be having Mike Turber on to talk about that at a later point. But our first guest in this first segment is our good friend Sev Tok. She is an author. She is an alien abductee. She is an experiencer. She has her own show on KGRA, the all-new Alien Spirit with Sev, that we will be talking about. Also, she does some amazing design your aura classes. We'll be talking about some frequency work, things like that, as well as soul purpose readings. Welcome back to the show, Sev. How are you doing, my friend?
Hi, Chris. Hi, everybody. Delighted to be back.
Always great chatting with you. How have things been with you?
Very busy. I think probably everyone that you talk to who is involved in ufology right now probably tells you the same thing. We're all busy.
Yeah, no, it is absolutely stacked right now. It's wild, all the things that are happening amongst the community. So let's start off with your new show. What brought you to start Alien Spirit with Sev Tok?
Well, thank you. Alien Spirit with Sev has always been the name of my YouTube channel, which I started a few years ago. And the day after I resigned from MUFON, I was the state director for North Carolina and on the executive committee of the ERT, and I resigned from MUFON in June. The day after I resigned, KGRA called me and said, would you like your own show? I said, oh my goodness, yes, I'm so grateful. And so I call it Alien Spirit with Sev. It's the same name as my YouTube channel.
Yeah.
And I like the name Alien Spirit because really what I talk about is a combination or a mesh of alien or ET messages and events mixed with spirituality. I started out doing soul purpose readings 14 years ago, and I still do them. And my whole UFO ET world just started 7 years ago. And so for 7 years, I was just purely a spiritual healer, doing a variety of sessions. And then came the UFO ET stuff. And now I see that they go hand in hand. They're completely intertwined. I can't separate the two, although sometimes I do. Sometimes people just want me to talk about spirituality. Some people just want me to talk about UFOs. But then there's also this center where they both meet.
Well, and that is something that we've talked about with you and with numerous other experiencers out there. The fact that once you've had that experience, something changes, and there becomes almost a yearning for something more. It's even the work of Kathleen Martin with her, which the work with her study just finished. So it'll be interesting to see what the results of that come out to be. But the whole idea of spiritual change that comes about because of these alien experiences. Now, let's explore your alien experience for a minute, Sev, and how that changed you energetically.
So my first conscious memories of ET contact are from age 10. So that had an effect on me starting then, even though I didn't even realize it. It's not really until I become an adult, an older adult, that I can see how all this ET contact did have beneficial effect on me. It had a negative effect on me only because that's how I decided to perceive it. I didn't have to look at it that way, and I no longer look at it that way. That was just from fear. That was just a perspective of fear. And I do like to bring up the point that some of our most famous experiencers, like Travis Walton, Terry Lovelace, they started off thinking that the ETs were bad and doing horrible things to them. But both of those gentlemen have changed their minds. They don't talk like that anymore. That's because they've had years to think about it, and they can see the benefit of these experiences for them, and the spiritual link, and how they've grown, and how their own awareness and their own consciousness has expanded.
Yeah, and that is an important point to bring up. The idea that that the consciousness has been expanded because of the experience, and once again, a lot of that also comes through the processing of things over time, and coming to realize what these things may have been for. The other things related to them. Not everybody realizes the deep tendrils that these experiences have in their life until they sometimes have the time to pull back from it and see how those things are connected.
The other aspect to ET contact is it's a multidimensional, interdimensional event. It's not just 3D. And for instance, a lot of us have telepathic communication in our ET contact. Whereas if you had asked that person the day before, can you speak in your mind, can you do telepathy with other people? They'd be like, no, I can't do that. But then that night they get abducted and they're speaking telepathically without even trying. So it's something that we can all do. And because there's that kind of aspect, that higher dimensional aspect to these to this contact, we can't help but then involve the higher levels of our consciousness in order to understand it, in order to process what happened, because it's taking place in the higher aspects of our consciousness. So we have to go there in order to process what's happening. If we stay in 3D, we're never going to understand what's going on. We can't even understand what's going on. Some people say we're jumping in the fourth and fifth dimension. I don't know. I don't like to give all these dimensions numbers because there's an infinite number. But it is about receiving data through the multi-dimensions. You could call it our quantum reality or our quantum field. And we're just constantly receiving data throughout. We're just surrounded by data, really.
Yeah.
It's like data. We're data.
Well, and, it's interesting that you bring that up, because the idea of vibration being data, I mean, it's literally no different than a 1 and a 0. It's a pulse. A 1 and a 0 in a computer is the exact same as a square wave. So yeah, the idea that intelligence and frequency and emotion and all these things are tied together. And I was trying to find the article. I literally just posted it on the Curious Realm group today, but it was a new physics article that had come out talking about beyond light travel is absolutely possible once you break beyond this dimension.
Yeah.
And it was like, wow, interesting concept. Because we're only bound by that law of physics in this dimension. Once you vibrationally go to a different dimensional plane, you can absolutely travel faster than the speed of light.
Yeah, in a blink of an eye.
Yeah.
You know, there are a lot of people who have NDEs, near-death experiences, that say everything is instant. Like they ask a question and they instantly know the answer. Like everything is happening like this, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And you know, when you start looking at the ideas of things like Akashic records, when you start considering the idea of shared intelligence, shared memory, shared experience, it's pretty fascinating to think that yes, we are all connected. Sev,
I have an Akashic records story.
please.
I don't think I've ever told it publicly.
Well, please.
Okay, so I've had a lot of paranormal, supernatural experiences in my life.
Yep.
All right, so this is one, I think this was around 2013, maybe, something like that. And I had just left my second marriage, and I'm living in this really cool apartment in a cool part of town by myself, me and my little doggy. And I'm having a lot of ET contact in this place, a lot of supernatural experiences. I'm really plugged in. And, oh, yeah, I see that. And I'm in bed, and I'm pretty much awake, but I'm still in bed. And I feel a being get into the bed behind me. This being gets in the bed behind me right here and like spoons me. And I'm like, whoa, okay, I got to instantly figure out, is this a good being or a negative being? Like, what's going on here? So I plugged into it, and I felt so much love, just unconditional love. I'm like, oh, this is beautiful. And so as it's spooning with me, I'm like curling up into this fetal position. My eyes are closed. And all of a sudden, I see something that looks like a green tablet. I know it's light green. It almost looks like a stone tablet, almost light green. And it has these columns of geometric shapes, but not finished. Like maybe an octagon with 7 sides or a triangle with 2 sides. It's a variety of shapes that are not finished. And as I'm looking at these variety of shapes that are not finished, I let out the most guttural, primal yell on the top of my lungs. Now, did it come out in 3D so my neighbors heard? I don't know. I heard it, but I don't know if it came out in 3D or if it came out in a multi-dimension. So as this primal scream is coming out of me, and I'm seeing all these rows of geometric shapes, and some being is like cuddling me, and it lasted for just a few seconds, not for very long, and it ended. And I was like, what the hell was that? And then I was told, well, you could call that your Akashic records, and we could explain each of those geometric shapes as a particular life or consciousness that you had, where maybe your intent for that consciousness wasn't finished to your original desires or likes, and so that's why that one octagon has 7 sides and not 8 sides. So the whole point of all this existence is to finish off all these geometric shapes that then all fit into this flower of life.
Okay.
It's how they explained it to me.
That is interesting. So what with the spooning then?
Yeah.
I mean, I guess that would be my question is, did you have any telepathic messages from the being that was spooning you or anything like that? This
sacred geometry information.
Okay.
And the Akashic records and the unfinished shapes. Yeah, it all came from that being.
Interesting. And this was the only experience that you had like that.
Yeah, it was the only one that I've had a guttural primal scream like that. I wonder what that was about too. Maybe I was just releasing a lot of energy from consciousnesses that I didn't need. I don't know what that was, but it felt good. And it wasn't scary. I was not scared at all.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah, it was profound.
That is remarkable. And when you start looking at the idea of especially the unfinished objects, the idea of you're here to figure out how to finish the objects.
Yes, which is what the ETs keep telling us through these crop circles. ETs keep showing us sacred geometry and geometric shapes over and over and over. And we're just looking and going, oh, what are we supposed to do? We're supposed to figure out what this means. These are encoded messages for us. Yeah. I also believe, in fact, I'm actually getting pretty interested in symbol therapy. I think we actually undergo therapy by looking at particular symbols. This is something that I'm investigating right now. It's old. It's nothing new. It's ancient.
You know, at the MUFON conference 2 years ago, there was a fantastic artist there. I bought a beautiful piece from him.
I bought a piece from him too.
And that was a lot of his work and concept, was the idea that these symbols themselves, having them around, can change the vibration of a space.
That's exactly what I do. So the one that I bought from him, I have a behind me as I work on my desk, and then Beautiful. I have a variety of other symbols surrounding me as I work at my desk. One time I was in a meditation. I opened my eyes and I looked at these symbols that are 2D or 1D, whatever you want to call it, just flat on square pieces of paper. And after my meditation, I saw these symbols come to life. I saw each one become 3D and come out of the paper in its waves, in its 3D shape, with its own distinct colors, its own distinct sound. I saw them come to life and come out of the paper towards me and into me. And I'm like, oh my God, I get it. Yeah, these are just cross sections of multidimensional energy beams. Yeah. Just like mandala is a cross section of an energy beam. And that's what these symbols are. So when you look at a symbol, try and look at it in a 3D way. Yeah. It's 3D representation. That's how it's doing its work. It's not just sitting on the piece of paper. It's infiltrating you.
Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, it's interesting because when I, as you know, do a lot of frequency therapy work, a lot of frequency meditation music, binaural beat music, things like that. And as I say on the show regularly, we are nothing but conscious vibration. That's what we are. If you want to call that a soul, fantastic. But the idea is that once we vibrate one octave higher, we'll no longer attract this physical matter. And we'll move into another dimension, and we'll do whatever we're supposed to do in that dimension. You know, once
we have lives, we do have lives that we are living in a higher frequency dimension.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Consciousnesses.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the idea, just from pure physics, the idea that our energy could be created or destroyed is defunct.
You can destroy energy. Don't they say you can't destroy energy?
Yeah, no, it can only change form.
Right, you can't.
It can only change form. So that's just it. Our energy, our vibration, whatever you want to call this conscious vibration that we are individually, goes on eternally.
I know. And sometimes that's just such a tiring thought. Think that this is never going to end. What? Are you serious? Forever? Why?
Well, you know, here's the thing, though, is it doesn't continue like this.
I know.
It doesn't continue like this.
I mean, there's no break. There's no break.
There is no break. There is no break. And when you think about it, like it is kind of one of those like, whew, wow, that's an exhaustive thought to know that for all eternity you will be in a cycle of creation, destruction, changing, moving,
space time into eternity.
Well, it's kind of that infinite loop dream, you know, where you're running down the hall and you open the door and you're at the beginning of the hall again. It's like,
A nightmare.
ah!
Yeah.
But in all sincerity, when you start talking about life in multiple dimensions, when you start considering this idea, it changes everything, and it changes the way that even you interact with the world around you, considering that there are other dimensions right there next to you.
Yeah,
You know?
and then you realize how connected we are.
Yeah.
It's then that you realize the connection. When you start actually communicating through the dimensions, you realize, oh my God, I'm connected to so much more than this. And then when we know we're connected, then hopefully we start to become more conscious about our actions. How are my actions affecting you?
Yeah.
And so if you wake up tomorrow in a really bad mood, that doesn't just affect you, that affects all of us. You know, the butterfly effect. I mean, it really does. It might sound cuckoo to some people, but that energy just keeps radiating, and energy doesn't die. So your, foul energy just keeps moving along. And so that's why when we realize that we are connected to one another, hopefully, we start to make better choices, kinder choices, and we're not out to abuse and kill.
Yeah. Yeah. And, with that in mind, Sev, with your abduction, with your experiences of abduction, because it's not like it only happened once in your life, what was it that flipped that switch for you from victim of abduction to experiencer?
So when you say experiencer, your definition of experiencer is not being a victim?
Yeah. I would say experiencer is very much somebody who has come to terms with their experience, as opposed to an abductee who absolutely had the same experience, but hasn't quite seen it as like an experience that has steeled them in a specific way in life yet. Right now it's still something that was thrust upon them.
Right. Yeah, there's victim mode.
Which is still a perfectly apt title,
That's what did it. This way.
Yeah.
That's what did it. That's what changed everything. The 2 X's on my tush. A year ago, yesterday, or a year ago, 2 days ago, that first X appeared. It's been 7 years. And that's what pushed me over the edge, because I finally had tangible proof. It's tangible proof. And that's when I had to start looking into this and getting answers. And that's where Kathleen Martin came into my life and helped me.
Yeah, and
the episode that I'm in on Ancient Aliens just aired a couple weeks ago.
Yes, it did actually. And you've been on numerous shows as we're scrolling here on screen, and as you were saying.
Will you go up just a little bit? So this is a slide that I made, right there.
Epic.
To show my first conscious ET contact when I was a little girl, when I was 10, because I would find myself outside at night in the grass, and a ship very similar to this one would come and hover over me. And that lasted from 10 to 12. And it would land, and stairs would descend, and this being would walk down. And the being was more human than not. It looked like a young male with black hair and like black clothes. And I was always so happy to see him, because he felt like a space brother to me. And he visited me for a couple of years, so many times that I lost count, actually. And the last time he visited me, it was different, because this time I was with a group of other kids, and I had never been with kids before. And he flew away, and we knew we weren't going to see him again. And that's when I heard in my head, it's time to get to work. You have work to do. But I'm 12. I don't know what that means.
Yeah. And as these experiences happen to you in life, because once again, the marks left on your body didn't occur until 7-8 years ago, correct?
2017. So from the age of 10 until 7 years ago, I was hiding all of it.
Wow.
And I a lot of it. And I had a lot of marks on my bodies and weird lights in the hallway and things on my bed touching me and marks that I couldn't, skin missing with no blood, all kinds of things that I would just try to ignore. But then I could not ignore the exes, could not ignore the exes.
Yeah. Yeah. And
what I needed. I joke that I think that's the Grays were like, what the hell are we going to do to this girl so she finally, so she finally sees us. We've tried everything.
Now throughout these numerous experiences, were there changes in their message? Was it the same? Do you believe it was the same group of beings that you saw every time throughout your life, or do you think it was different? I don't even know if I'd say species or groupings of aliens, things like that.
Yes, I've seen a variety. The Grays, I feel like I see the same Grays over and over again. I feel like it's the same group of people. Then I've seen this more human-like male when I was 10. I have not seen him again, I don't think. And then in 2019, these light beings came into my living room and gave me information about Disney and Tesla and Tchaikovsky and about DNA activation. Those were two beautiful light beings. Then I've also seen some of the same beings that Chris Bledsoe has seen. Chris Bledsoe just lives a couple hours from me. And he's seen like this four-legged being creature. I've seen that too, along with this short, like luminescent being that looks like a light bulb. Seen that too, and also the light beings. Yeah. And I think, and then some other beings here and there.
Sure.
For instance, I woke up in the middle of the night one night, and my ex-partner was sleeping, but I looked over to his side of this bed, to him, and standing right next to him, was this beautiful light being, like golden speckles in the shape of a human, just looking over at him. And then I looked at him, and whenever I see things like that in the middle of the night, I always take my head off my pillow, always, and make sure I'm awake. So I did that, and then I looked at it, and then it disappeared. And so I told my partner, yeah, there was this beautiful being just looking at you the other night. He's like, no. I'm like, okay. All right. I'm not going to go there then.
Yeah.
But, he saw a lot. He felt a lot. He experienced a lot. And so he was just trying to understand it because he was a very, very logical man.
Yeah.
But he never dissed it. He never said this is crazy or stupid. He just said,
not for me.
I can't explain this.
Well, and I think that's where a lot of people stand with a lot of these topics, Sev, is the idea of not for me. That might be for somebody else, but I don't know if that's necessarily a topic that I want to get into or something that I want to talk about. Even if for the sake of talking about it might make it real. And I don't want that to be real.
Like, because they're in denial, like I was.
Sure.
So when I see someone go into denial, I'm like, I get it. And you might have to stay in denial for a little bit of time, or maybe for the rest of your life. That's on you. Like, I'm not here to force you to come out of denial. That's all on you.
Yeah. Yeah. And there is we get into that a lot on the show, Sev, the idea of consent into a system. Whether it's a consent into a system of living an angry life or consent into a system of seeing an experience as negative, like you said, you aren't here necessarily to pull anybody along, but you're definitely here to shed a light and to show somebody whether or not it's one of those. I've tried forcing the horse to drink once I bring him to the water, but PETA tends to call me the next day. You can't force the horse to drink. All you can do is show it the way to the water. Like, here's the water, man. Help yourself.
That's not what I'm doing. I'm not out here trying to convince anybody to change their mind. I'm not doing that at all. I just know a lot of people maybe are just starting to come out about it, and they just want to listen to other people talk about it, know that it's safe. And there are other people who think
Yeah.
the way that they do, just to give them a safe space, let them know that they're not alone. There are millions of experiencers in the world, millions.
Yeah. No, and that's just it. The experiences are growing. The experiences are growing in number. It is fascinating to see the numbers come in month after month, with reports, with sightings, things like that. And that's one of the things that I explain to people is that, you know, once you've had an experience, Sev, whether it's a sighting of an object in the sky, whether it's a paranormal experience, what have you, the science has begun. Like that is the first step in the scientific process, is observation. You know, so
Yeah.
like the question is, where do you take it from there? You know, do you continue the scientific process and start researching that topic and looking up other related things, and then maybe form a hypothesis of some sort, you know, that then requires experimentation and repetition of the process. But that's just it. Every experiment or every experience begets the experiment, is how it should be. Unfortunately, many people, yes, their experience can scare them and make them not want to take part in that, not want to explore it further, you know?
Yeah, and that's when we start talking about perspective, just like you were saying. It's all about changing your perspective here on Earth, not just when
Yeah.
you're off Earth, but here on Earth. What's your perspective here? If that's what it's all about.
Well, let's start getting into some of that, especially in how that relates to your soul classes, your soul readings, and your design your aura classes.
Yeah, thank you. So 14 years ago, I started doing soul purpose sessions. And these are what I call interdimensional sessions. Information that comes through is interdimensional. And it comes through my clients' auric field, through their guides, through my guides, and just picking up information that floats around us. And this is something we can all do. There is free information available to all of us. Like the best therapy is free. If you could just exercise your psychic muscles and pull this information towards you and process it. So I'm not doing anything that the rest of that anybody else can't do. It just takes practice. And then what comes through is why you're here. Why did you come to Earth? What's your purpose? How can you manifest it? What are your best career paths and how you can manifest them? Also, a so-called past life comes up that explains something that's going on now. And we also talk about mental patterns that we all have that might just keep us from progress or from success. And we talk about how we can either alleviate those mental patterns or just learn how to maneuver around them so they don't hold you back anymore. And basically the soul purpose session, I like to call it a blueprint for happiness. We chart out how you can manifest your purpose. And we all know that when you're living your purpose, that's when you are the most fulfilled, the most dynamic, and the most successful, and the most healthy. And everyone wants to know, what's my purpose? What's my purpose? A lot of people ask that question. I say we all share a purpose, which is to love as much as possible. That's why we're here. And that starts with ourselves. And that's where a lot of us get hung up. Yeah. And when we talk about individual purpose, basically, what do you do that shows love to yourself? What do you do that you love to do so much that you lose track of time?
Yep.
That you're just blissed out. What is that? That's your purpose. Whatever it is that makes you feel like that, that's your purpose, because you're showing love to yourself. And then the flip side is it radiates love to everybody else. So that's really what purpose is basically do what it is that makes your heart sing. That's your purpose, whatever it is.
Yeah.
moment, and it could change. But basically, radiate as much love as possible. And we've forgotten how to do that. We've been brainwashed by society, by government, by teachers, by friends, by our parents. And so these sole purpose sessions are like debriefings of all this bull crap, lies that we believe about ourselves, which are not true.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know, what's even interesting about that, Sev, is that even has to do with frequency, because at that point you're talking about the frequency with which you listen to your negative self-talk, the frequency with which you self-sabotage yourself with negative thinking, things like that. Because it does take a minute or two to get past that want to do that. You know, and I'm not saying I'm perfect with it. Heck, I had a bout of it just 2 or 3 days ago, you know, and it's one of those that, being able to step back, recollect, take notice of what's happening around you and reform that into positive thought instead of negative, self-destructive thought. Because negative thought, I don't know, it's just... It's literally noise in a signal path for me, of vibration. Like,
well, it's a way to keep you down. It's a way to keep you small. Yeah. So if you want to stay small, then that's what you do. If you don't want to stay small, then you have to bounce out of that. And it is all about frequency, because what you think is what you're radiating out. And that's why I have this new class called How to Design Your Aura, because your aura, or your biofield, is your billboard, and it announces to everybody, whether it's subconscious or consciously, what do you think about yourself? How do you see yourself? What's your role? How do you want other people to treat you? How successful do you think you should become? That's all sits in your aura, and it radiates out, and then you align with similar energies. That's why it's so important to pay attention to the quality of the energy that you exude. And that is reliant on the quality of your thoughts. And so in this class, we determine what is it that you want to change about yourself? What are the changes you want to make? What are some goals that you want to accomplish? What are some changes you want to make in your life? And then let's redesign your auric energy or your auric frequency so you can align with all of those things. And so that involves a change in mindset. It also involves looking at symbols, looking at colors. It's actually a pretty fun thing to do, to design your aura.
Yeah, and I can see, especially with the colors and color therapy, things like that, because not many people realize how influencing color is.
Absolutely.
Our eyes are probably... most of the time, a good 60% of the data that we are taking in. And psychologically, not just vibrationally, but psychologically, the affect that colors have is really interesting. It was one of the things that I truly got into in subliminal psychology, along with binaural beat, was the idea of the way that colors move the mind. For instance, the colors yellow and red activate hunger. So go start taking a look at your fast food logos.
Actually, my dining room is yellow.
It's it's like, you start looking at McDonald's, yellow and red.
That's
Wendy's, white, red, yellow. Like it's pretty fascinating. Burger King, red and yellow. Like it's wild.
And those are the lower chakra colors too.
Oh yeah, no, those are absolutely the base colors of the chakra. Those are the root and the parts that you need to kind of clear the weeds out of before you move up into solar plexus and things like that.
You got to feel safe. So if you don't feel safe, your root chakra is imbalanced. And what are some of the signs of that? Well, maybe too much sex, too little sex. Also, just always, if you say, for instance, you're always afraid that you're never going to be able to pay your rent, you might be evicted at any moment. And then you have this, your first chakra is really aggravated because you don't feel safe at all. If you don't feel safe, it's really hard to then go and try and be enlightened with your higher chakras. I mean, you
Yes.
have first there has to be a basic amount of safety required at that point. And also illnesses in that lower part of your body, female illnesses and such,
Yep.
come from feelings of not feeling supported and not feeling safe.
Interesting. Interesting. And I could see how that would absolutely relate to health, things like that, because once you start looking at Maslow's hierarchies, things like that, as far as what moves humanity, yeah, like the basic need of support and belonging is one of the first ones.
That was a good chart.
Oh, you like that?
Yeah, I like that one a lot. In fact, I was just talking about this. I have a series of sessions I call Soul Development, which is kind of like coaching and mentoring. And I have an opera singer in Manhattan right now who's undergoing the Soul Development. And we're talking about sound healing through her voice. And just today, we're talking about the notes and which notes align with which chakras. And she got a tuning fork, and she's experimenting with that. Her voice is lovely, and her husband's an opera singer too. And so it's really fun to talk about sound therapy with opera singers.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Especially a proper one that can run the scale of a grand piano. Bottom to top, like they truly do understand this on a different level than other people. And the idea that exposing yourself to different colors can absolutely help in all sorts of ways.
Oh yeah, light therapy. Well, not only light therapy, but color therapy is a real thing. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, and once again, these things deal with all kinds of health issues, stuff like that. The one I've always found so interesting is, of course, solfeggio frequencies, things like that. I use a lot of solfeggio work, and by my binaural beat music, things like that. But specific frequency ranges that help rebuild tissue, that help release PTSD and help release traumas, things like that. It's fascinating once you start diving in and researching exactly what frequencies do in your life. So the idea,
it's like medicine. It's like sound medicine.
It is.
And what you're doing, it's complicated what you're doing, really.
Well, an album that I've been working on for a long time, and I think I've told you about it, Within the Rocks, where I'm actively taking petroglyphs, scribing them out in Photoshop, and then turning that line drawing of a petroglyph into an actual sound. And the operating principle is the fact that these people who drew the petroglyphs were basically synesthetic and were drawing the sound that they were hearing. Because once you start looking at a lot of these, they actively look like synthesizer sound waves. It's pretty fascinating. And there was a study that was just done. There was a study that was just done on a huge panel, I want to say in Peru, where they figured out that the square patterns that were there in the tribal pattern were basically a rhythmic pattern to be drummed at that sacred site. It was basically a form of
sheet music,
writing down sheet music before it ever existed, like 8,000-9,000 years ago. So pretty interesting to see like these petroglyphs almost being decoded in this same kind of way that I was doing. And
How
it's
are you turning a line into a sound? How do you do that?
well, that has to do with algorithmic programs. There are programs out there that will take an image and basically take the color and the depth, and like if you took a still frame of me right now, you know, the color red would be one sound, the depth of field from me from the background would be the range of sound. So
how do you do it from a cave drawing?
well, from the cave drawing, at that point, I'm taking the cave drawing and the petroglyph that you see on the wall. I'm tracing out a very specific part of it. So let's see. Let's show a petroglyph here from somebody's work. Let's see. Like here's one right here. So if you look in where'd it go? So yeah, taking things like this circle right here.
Yeah.
And actively just tracing that out.
Mm-hmm.
And then giving that to the algorithm to say transmit this into sound. It's pretty fascinating, and you start getting into some things that you would get off of vector scopes and things like that. It's pretty interesting.
That's cool, Chris.
Especially once you start looking at patterns like this right here, that are basically a sawtooth pattern. Like that is a synthesizer sound. It's pretty wild, and all of these things are encoded literally into petroglyphs all over the place. Not Ike. I don't know what Ike would do. But I basically take these parts right here, clip them out, and then trace them and turn it into black and white. So that the only thing there is the contrast of the two and the shape.
Oh,
and
I see. Okay.
It's pretty fascinating because, yeah, it basically starts generating synthesizer type tones, the same things that I would dial in with the equipment over my left shoulder. You know,
okay,
if it was.
I would like you to do that with my name.
Okay.
Can you do it with names, and so you can actually create the sound of someone's name? Wouldn't that be cool?
Sure, I can do that for you. I can make that happen.
Know what Sev sounds
that
like.
That would be interesting. But some of the sounds that come off these petroglyphs are pretty wild and amazing. And it's interesting to me, like if we were to, you know, actively analyze this, then yes, we could come up with the exact pitch of what that frequency would be, you know. So we could find out the exact tone of what that is.
Really?
And perhaps using those tones, perhaps using those frequencies would open something to another dimension, or even vibrate your brain at a rate as many sacred sites do. The one I quote all the time is the 19 hertz. That is the standing wave frequency of the king's tomb in the king's chamber in the Great Pyramid. Is 19 hertz, which is 1 hertz below the range of human hearing. It is one of the frequencies that is associated with paranormal, with the feeling of something is in the room with me. It is also the exact frequency at which the water in your eye begins to vibrate and optical illusions start. So, yeah.
Okay. Then how did they create his chamber to be that frequency?
Well, that's basically, you have to know the speed of sound. You would have to know the speed of sound in order to do that. But myself as an audio engineer, walking into a room and clapping and hearing how fast something repeats, and knowing the distance from the source of the sound to the back of the room. So it's like the distance from the source to the back doubled times the speed of sound gives you the first resonant frequency of the room. So if I was to be tuning a sound system in a room, that would be the first frequency where feedback would start in the room, because that's the first resonant frequency. So that's where like subwoofers and things like that would start feeding back, and you would hear a low end like woo build in the room from microphones, things like that. So that's how, as an audio engineer, you learn to tune a room and learn how to figure out the resonant frequency in every room that you walk into.
Okay, so they accomplish that by the size of the room, the angles of the walls.
Exactly. By the
depth,
cubic
all
volume
that.
of the room.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And where it's located probably too within the pyramid.
Sure. Sure. You know, and it's fascinating to see that, because yeah, like you can absolutely tune a room when you build it. You know, and we know that they did things like that. I mean, you're from Turkey. That's the home of one of the best ancient amphitheaters in the world. You know,
well, home to lots of amazing things. We actually have more ruins than Greece does.
yes, you do.
Yeah, that's okay.
And to see the fact that, you know, amphitheaters, things like that, were built on these same principles, on these same carrier wave principles.
Yeah.
You know, that's how they accomplish that, with no microphones and no speakers, to hear things perfectly from 300 feet away. It's fascinating and it's awesome, and it's literally just understanding the physics of space and sound, you know. But the fact is, you had to understand the physics of space and sound. It's fascinating, you know. And even the idea that Pythagoras had the first real note system of frequencies and things like that, the Pythagorean scale at 432, you know, which we changed that Hertz frequency much later into 440 and things like that.
Also, the triangle. The triangle shape is very important.
Yeah.
When it comes to manifestation and when it comes to just opening portals. There's something about the triangle, and I'm learning more and more and more about the triangle. I'm really getting into symbols and shapes right now.
Really? Interesting. And you know, that I have done some sacred geometry work. I've found a couple of cool programs that I'll turn you on to off of air that let you design your own sacred geometry, things like that. It's pretty fascinating and awesome stuff. I have fastly fallen in love with it.
I bought a compass.
Oh, nice.
Do you remember? I don't know how old you are. I'm older than you, obviously. I know that. But when you were growing up, did you have spirogyra?
Oh, spirograph.
Spirograph.
I had spirogyra too, which is some of the best jazz music around.
Yeah, spirograph.
Yes.
Oh my gosh, I love that. You can still play it.
Oh no. I actively got
so
they came out for the 50th anniversary. They came out with an aluminum engineer's version. So all the cogs are actively made out of aluminum, so they don't wear out.
Do you have that?
Yes, I got it for my son.
I would think that it's becoming a very popular thing because of sacred geometry now.
Yeah, and it's interesting to see. And that was some of my first exposure to, other than Dungeons and Dragons, to dodecahedrons and things like that. You know, yeah. I mean, all my Dungeons and Dragons dice were all platonic solids. You know.
Oh, that's so funny you should say that. With another one of my clients today, who's also in the Soul Development series, we were talking about platonic solids. I also teach a class called the Third Eye Journey, where we do this together. It's a private class that we do together, and I take you through 2 meditate. Yeah, I love doing this class so much I can't even tell you. I love it, love it, love it. I did not know I was going to love it this much. And so first we go through 2 meditations together. I guide you through a meditation with some high vibrational music, and we're floating in space. And then this being comes and then cleanses you, and then another being comes and you communicate with it. And you download information. And then the next part of this third eye journey is we listen to some high vibe music again. This time I show you symbols, and you close your eyes and you download information about the symbols and we discuss it. So this is all about how to exercise your psychic muscles, not just your third eye, because I'm also asking you to hear. I'm also asking you to feel.
Yeah.
And writing everything down, and it's personal, very private information just for you to help you on your path of development. And we talk about it, and then you see how easy you can do it. Everybody, there is not a single solitary person. I've been teaching this class for over a decade. Not a single solitary person can't do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's so much fun.
Absolutely. And
thank you for sharing that with everybody.
Oh, absolutely. I just pulled my nerddom off the shelf behind me, but that's my actual original Dungeons and Dragons dice from like junior high, from like 1985.
I never played Dungeons and Dragons. So what was that? The dice?
Yeah. That was the dice that you actually used to score everything and choose your attacks and defenses and everything else. Oh, it was so nerdy.
So that's your original dice from when you were a kid?
Yeah.
You had it framed?
Oh yeah. I get these things for my.
A lot of money now.
No.
Oh.
Absolutely not. I get these tiny little protective cases for my rocks and minerals. They're like 15 to a pack for like $20, something like that. So it's a tiny little pop open frame with like stretch material in between it.
Stretch. Okay, I see now. Yeah, that's really cool.
So yeah, great for holding specimens, stuff like that. If you've got a bunch of little knickknacks and tchotchkes. But yeah, it's a proud part of my nerddom to still have them. The fact that I do is amazing. So we have you for a couple minutes left, Sev. Thank you so much for your time. It's always great chatting with you, especially when it comes to vibration, things like that. It's such an important idea for people to begin to be happy with themselves and be okay and understand that, yes, you may have had an experience, but that experience was for you and for you alone,
Yeah, and don't hide from it. Let's figure out what you're supposed to learn from it, because it wasn't a one-off and it wasn't an accident.
Yeah, precisely. Before we let you go, Sev, tell us one more time where everybody can go to register for your new classes, when they can tune in to your new show, Alien Spirit with Sev.
Thank you. So Alien Spirit is my YouTube channel. The radio show is on the first and third Mondays of every month. You can watch it on my YouTube channel, or you can watch it on KGRA Digital Network. And I have my soul purpose sessions and my other classes, the Third Eye Journey and Soul Design, Auric Design. And I help experiencers around the world. All you have to do is just contact me, and we'll communicate and just fill out a few questions. Yeah. If you go to tell me your ET story. Yeah. Thank you for doing this. And scroll down a little bit. Keep on scrolling down. Yeah, a little bit more, because I'm going to, And then right there is just a few questions you have to answer. It's very private, just a few, not many at all. Answer them, very, very private. I don't share who you are with anybody, and we'll discuss it, and I'll help you. And the more of us who come out, the better it's going to be, although I don't force anybody to come out. I just want you to know that. But on my show a couple weeks ago, I had experiencers talking, and one of them came out for the very first time.
Beautiful.
Yeah. And then next week tomorrow, I'm interviewing a Danish reality star, and she made contact with a gray, and she's coming out for the first time.
Wow. Wow.
So I don't want to force anyone to come out, but I do suggest you come out to yourself. You don't have to come out to the world, but you have to come out to yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. You've in order to understand yourself better, you need to come out to yourself.
Yeah.
So, Sev, thank you again for your time as always. It's great chatting with you. I'm lifted just talking tonight, so I appreciate it.
Oh, thank you.
Absolutely. Appreciate everything as always. While you are online checking out everything from Sev Tok, everybody, stop on by Curious Realm. CuriousRealm.com is where you can like, follow, subscribe. That's where you can find all of the episodes. That's where you can find all of our guests' YouTube channels as well, right there at CuriousRealm.com/videos. We're also connected to Curious Research. That is our new effort to help paranormal researchers and UFO, UAP researchers shake the hand of science with their data. If you are an experiencer, there are things out there to help you. The new album Experiencer by yours truly is a binaural beat album that is there to help you release the PTSD reticent from your trauma. So stop on by, check that out. You can find that at Curious Research. Stay tuned through these breaks real quick, everybody. When we come back, we will be joined by our good friend Mike Turber talking about the fiasco that is Boeing right after this. The key to good science is good research. At the heart of good research is a good data set. With the field observation and encounter log from Curious Research, you can easily keep track of your investigative information all in one place, making it easier to review cases and readily see comparisons and contrasts between them. Whether out in the woods squatching, in a back room gathering EVPs, or using high-tech gear to track UFO, UAP activity, this easy-to-carry, pocket-sized scientific data log is the perfect companion for any field researcher. You can find your copy of the Curious Research Field Observation and Encounter Log at Amazon.com or visit the official Curious Realm store at CuriousRealm.com/store to reserve your copy for yourself, your family, or a mind that you want to open. That website again is CuriousRealm.com/store. Well, hello, everybody, and thank you so much for staying with us through that quick commercial break. And thank you so much to our sponsors, especially True Hemp Science. True Hemp Science is your source for the best CBD products out there, folks. I have used True Hemp Science for years for my travel anxiety, and I am here to tell you they are hands down some of the best CBD products that you can get your hands on. Christopher Lynch over there has some fantastic formulations, amazing terpene profiles, amazing products. Stop on by and check them out. TrueHempScience.com is the website that you want to use. Curious7 is the code that you want to use to save 7% off your entire cart of $50 or more and get two, count them, two free 25 milligram edibles on the way out the door. Our guest in this segment is the amazing Mike Turber of 5x5 News. He is here tonight to talk about the ongoing issues. He's normally here talking about security things. Of course, 9/11 just happened, the anniversary of that. We had him on talking about that last year. This year, this time around, we are having him on talking about Boeing Starliner, and specifically Boeing in general, just the major endemic issues that have been going on with what is quite literally, when you look at contracts from the U.S. government, a beast of a company. I mean, here's one from the U.S. Air Force for $2.3 billion. You go down, you look at the Navy. There's stuff in just about every branch of the Air Force, every branch of the military, dealing with Boeing. Here's one for $9 million from the Army. So, all kinds of contracts that Boeing has had military-wise, civilian-wise, for decades. and they have been having massive issues with whistleblowers, issues with safety. I mean, planes flying under ceiling. So welcome back to the show, Mike Turber. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Doing all right. Doing a whole lot better than Boeing. Let's put it that way, bud. Because as somebody who I don't travel the way I once did. At one point pre-COVID, I was a good 35, 40 weeks a year for travel. Right. And I sat in a lot of Boeing seats. And you don't always get a choice as to who you fly when you're in the friendly skies. But true. Man, some of the stories that have been coming out lately, planes dipping to like 500 feet, right? Doors flying off mid-flight, all kinds of things. The whistleblowers, of course, have come out of the woodwork. There have been 2 that have died. There's another. What is going on with this American contractor, Mike?
Well, it appears, I mean, the latest one I think was Ed Pearson, but there's been a litany of whistleblowers coming out of the woodworks from Boeing. I think, once that door opens up and you have one come through, then the other ones, they kind of watch that for a little bit, and then more and more will come out. And you keep in mind, whenever you have a whistleblower, behind the scenes, you probably have 10 more people. For every one whistleblower you probably have 10 that are talking under grounds of not being a whistleblower. And there's a very good reason for that, because whether or not the government has their whistleblower program in place, whether there will not be any retaliation or whatever, anyone knows there's possible retaliation. And in this case, you might, I'm not going to say that they did, but you might lose your life over it. So it's not something to sneeze at by any means. But the latest, I think that the ongoing theme has been their use of non-conforming parts in their aircraft. Parts that aren't up to spec, parts that are come in late. And in a couple of cases, they did not even put a certain part in; they just literally put the old part back in. So some of these cases, you just have to wonder, who is making the final decision? Does it go all the way up the chain? If it does, even if it doesn't, I mean, the head of Boeing, when he sat in front of the Congress and he was testifying, you could just see almost through him that there was this sense of he didn't really care. It's just, I mean, you can put on a front, but you can read through that. I mean, anyone that has empathy at all can look at someone and tell that another person doesn't really have that much empathy. So I think Boeing is going to be in for one hell of a roller coaster ride over the next 2 to 3 years, which may involve obviously the loss of contracts, even though they still seem to be getting. I mean, they're the 5th largest contractor for the government. And that's after Northrop Grumman, you got Leidos, I think it's General Dynamics, Lockheed Martin, and then Boeing. And, when you look at the amount of money that is funneled into Boeing as one of the largest contractors in the government, you have to wonder, where is our oversight in some of this, especially when it comes to the government contracts. Boeing obviously has civilian contracts, but where's the government type oversight? What happened with Starliner? What happened with several other incidences that they've had last year? So
and
it'd be hard.
At one point, pre-Reagan, things were totally different when it came to airlines. I remember it was within my lifetime that all these things came under a federal auspice.
Yeah, and that also came in with the deregulation. There was quite a bit that happened during that. And you remember when Reagan fired all the air traffic controllers?
Yep.
And that tells you something. So,
And when you're talking about, once again, I just had the Newsweek article up, since January, over 100 whistleblowers have contacted the FAA.
Yeah.
Over 100. That is a massive outpouring of information Mike, and not just like a red flag.
That's something you don't see. And normally if you see a whistleblower, you'll see one or two, even inside the actual government agencies,
Yeah. Oh, I don't know if we lost Mike or not. Are you still there, Mike? Hello?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, we just had a major lightning strike. You gotta love this. I mean, we're not. I know we're taping this, but you don't edit your tape, so this is going to go on. But yeah, we just had a lightning strike from hell that just hit right near us.
Wow.
And it's I mean, there's a lot of stuff out right now, but I'm back with you.
Well, before we lost you, we were talking about the major failures with Boeing, things like that, the massive number of whistleblowers, which once again, it's not like when things went haywire with Toyota and their floorboard seat, their floor mats in the Corolla, where there were one or two people. Like there's like 100 people coming out and saying something about this. So there is,
and that's indicative.
It's a massive number.
Yeah, it's the 110-100 rule. So if you have one, you're going to have the 10 times whatever the next number is going to be, and then you're going to have, like in this case, we've got 100 whistleblowers roughly. That means there's a ton of. I mean, I can't remember how many employees Boeing has, but it's got to be in the over 100,000 probably. So there's a huge number of people that are, spitting on information that might be detrimental towards the future of Boeing. And I don't want to see Boeing, go away. I mean, it's an icon of American ingenuity and how we do things. But at the same time, when something like this happens, if it's systemic, then you have to go in and root out the problem. And I think with the amount of funds and the amount that Boeing is entrenched into our country's infrastructure, that the government is probably going to step in, and I don't know if they'll necessarily save them, but the government is probably going to send some oversight into any of the going-ons at Boeing to get that back to square one. If they're going to do it, we'll see. It depends on what this CEO does or what the future CEO does. The heads are going to roll over there, and in more ways than one probably, but we'll see how that pans out.
Well, and it's interesting that you bring that up, because the whole idea to begin with of too big to fail, the idea that we've bailed out banks now, we've bailed out all kinds of companies. The fact that because there are not even billions, almost trillions of dollars promised to this contractor when it comes to all the different branches in the military, all the different private sector things that are coming through it, things like that. What do you think the likelihood of a bailout of something like that is, where, because I hate to see us go Russia. That's the last thing that I want to say. I mean, it's what broke Russia was them coming in and going, okay, plant, you can't take care of the engines, we'll come in and take care of it.
Right. And that is, the thing about Boeing is, it's a little bit different because the Russian infrastructure is not set up in such a way to be able to even do that. I mean, they're set up in an entirely different way. And when they come in, the takeover structure is the military taking over. So it wouldn't, we wouldn't have that. It would be more of a Senate role to put the oversight in. So but your point's very valid in that it's still going to be someone coming in and telling you what to do that doesn't really know what you do. And that's imperative that be looked at. But I think right now, as we look at the infrastructure inside Boeing and the amount of communities that it touches, the amount of businesses that rely on Boeing technology, it's quite a bit. I mean, the 737 is I think it's the number one flown aircraft in the world, if I'm not mistaken, as far as commercial airliners go. And the 777 is beautiful. I mean, I know a few pilots that fly that, and they're just in awe about the plane. But then when you hear things like this, it does. Think about this: when you have your own employees saying in social media and in news articles that they wouldn't even fly if they saw Boeing was the equipment, because they call it equipment on your tickets. They see Boeing as your equipment on the ticket, that they would second guess even flying it. That says something. That's pretty scary.
Yeah. And I mean, the equivalent would be somebody that works on the Ford line not being willing to drive a Ford because they know about the problems.
Well, it's Ford. I mean, that makes sense anyway. But I've got my F-250, so I'm Ford fan.
That's what Ford stands for.
Yeah, speaking of car companies, and you think about companies being bailed out. Think about Dodge, and when Lee Iacocca when he basically took on that government loan. Yep. He bailed out. They got bailed out, and they paid back, I think, the loan ahead of time, if I remember correctly. He wrote that into his book. So there are some success stories for the government coming in, but as far as taxpayers, there's a certain point where you start realizing how much of our money is put into saving companies from themselves. Yeah. And you're right. Too big to fail is an issue. And that's why we have the monopoly laws that we have, so that companies can't get to that point. But there are companies that should be at that point, that they deserve that point. Exactly. I mean, I can point to some. Yeah, exactly. I mean, I look at the American success stories and go, more power to you. If you can take that much of the market, go for it. Yeah.
And when you're talking about a company like Boeing, honestly, probably one of my favorite movies in the last decade has been The Aviator. I love that movie, mainly because I'm from Houston and I'm a Howard Hughes fanatic. I love Howard Hughes. He was a brilliant, brilliant man. The fact that he was not an engineer by any degree whatsoever, but made all those airplanes and designed all those airplanes and did all of that is absolutely phenomenal and truly an American success story. And
he was the Kelly Johnson of his day.
But also a prime example of how people like Boeing, how people like Lockheed and stuff like that ended up with these massive, massive government contracts that once you're locked into that contract, you ain't leaving that contract. See?
No, you're not.
Because the problem is you've been chosen for that contract because you have a proprietary technology. And
not only that, a lot of the way the contracts go, they go on a bidding process. Yeah. And so the government has to say, in general, a lot of them come through DARPA, where DARPA comes up with this cool new idea. Now, who are we going to get to actually manufacture it? And sometimes those ideas are brought in through open catalog or closed catalog at DARPA, and when they come through that system. But the DD-254 is your government contract. That's what you go under when you get it. And inside that contract, it basically states that the company claims they can do this, whatever, and then we are going to award this contract based on the following parameters. And they key into that contract either a date that the product that they're making has to be operational by, or they kill the project, or just like when somebody's out or a contractor's building a road, if they don't get the road in time, they get fined $1,000 per day or whatever it is, when they go over that time frame. So that's built into some of these contracts, but those things are waived so often that you start to wonder. F-22 is a classic example. F-35 is another classic example. I mean, we know when we get a new aircraft built that it's not going to be the price that they say it's going to be.
That's right.
It's just not going to be near it.
Yeah, well, I mean, you've got to make sure that you have the $5,000 air hose and things like that. And that's how you end up with a $1.3 trillion price tag on things, a $30 billion price tag per plane, things like that, where it's like just absolutely astronomical pricing. But at the same token, here's the thing: you typically win those contracts because you've either got to step forward on technology over people, or you've got a proprietary lockdown on a technology.
Absolutely.
You know,
absolutely.
so the real question comes to bear with these contracts still being awarded to a failing contractor. How much is being stymied development wise, especially when you're talking about things like Boeing Starliner? Like we still have astronauts stuck in space. And NASA, I have the article up like, oh, you know, astronauts would have been fine returning it. You hop in the Starliner, dude. You hop in it.
I would
you
not
hop
put
in it.
those. Yeah, I wouldn't put those people through that. Yeah, it's fine. It's fine. That noise you heard, that sonar sound, that was my. You know what's so funny is when I heard that sound, I said that sounds like a feedback noise or something's crossed. And sure enough, it ended up being microphone feedback. I laughed myself on that. Yeah, but yeah, I would not want to. You know, what came back was the suits that they wore to go up came back on that ship. And when you think about it, if you're in the ISS and you kind of don't want to think about the return trip too much, because it's just like when you're flying a plane. Your most dangerous times are during takeoff and landing. Same thing when you go to space.
That's right.
And so if you're sitting there and you know there's issues and then more issues crop up, I think it was a good decision to not let them come back, even though they would have had no problem whatsoever. But still, it's that psychological thing. I mean, I could not do that to them.
Hey, I've got, and you've heard me say it to you, I don't know if I could step foot into a Dragon capsule. I don't know if I could step foot into a Boeing Starliner. It's nothing but flat panels. There ain't no hard bypass, nothing. It is it is flat panel computers, man. All I could think of is halfway up seeing the pinwheel pop up, you know? And like what are you gonna do? How am I supposed to bypass this flat screen computer that's running everything?
You were good.
You know?
Yeah, I mean it is interesting to see. I remember when I first saw the inside of the Dragon capsule, I was amazed. I said, "Wow, this is amazing." I mean, you don't see any wires, you don't see anything in there. And it literally, it's beautiful. I mean, it really is nicely done. And then when you compare it to, say, Starliner, when you look at Starliner, you're thinking back to Apollo days. I mean, when you look at the design of it and stuff like this, your mind just goes back archaic almost. And I kind of agree with you to a point, but I in my mind, I would never miss that opportunity. I would still jump on board either one. But if I'm going to go out in style, buddy. But I've done enough in my life to where if I went right now, I'd be like, yeah, I did it my way.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. And with that in mind, though, what are we looking at for Starliner? Because right now we're looking at the fact of the competition will probably go up to space to rescue the capsule, or to rescue the astronauts, not the capsule. The capsule's back.
Yeah, the capsule's already back, but that is going to happen. I mean, SpaceX is they're already doing their suits, so they've got their body measurements, so they're doing their suits, and they're going to bring that up and Dragon and do that. And with Polaris Dawn, the launch yesterday, you start to think that SpaceX has proven themselves to be the go-to company when it comes to anything now in space. And you don't want to see obviously something impact them as well, because after them, there's really no one left. I would not put all my eggs in the Blue Origin basket. I know that.
No,
but the private sector has truly stepped up in a way that we've obviously never seen in the history of space at all. I mean, no country has come even close to anything we've done. SpaceX has launched more launches than every other country combined. You see the success of that, and you want to root them on. But if you're an employee at Boeing or you're an employee at a competing company, which there are several, but Boeing and obviously Blue Origin are the two main ones that would compete at a level that could be compared to, even though that's a stretch. But when you're an employee there and you see the success of SpaceX and you see the problems going on at your company, it's got to be a drain on how you get to work every day, and you put that smile on your face, and you get in there, and you want to have that team spirit. But after a while of continuous setbacks, it does weigh on you. I mean, a lot of times that would spur people to do better and to get more, get more efficient and what have you, and more productivity out of people. But at the same time, after a certain number of setbacks and a certain number of whistleblowers,
yeah,
it's got to be weighing on the minds of those employees that that this might be the end of the road for Boeing as far as certain things that they do. They may, companies have to order 10 years in advance the planes that they're going to order. And when you look at Starliner, has been in development for what, 12, however many years, 15 years or so.
Yep.
It's a lot. It takes a lot to get this technology off the ground, and it takes a lot of teamwork and a lot of esprit de corps to get people to just stay on that target. And after a while, that target starts to move away, and something like this has got to be detrimental to the company and the psyche of the people.
Well, absolutely. It's 100% detrimental to a team whenever it comes to a design team and a team that does things. And that brings up, I think, a really, really big issue that we spoke about a little bit at MUFON Symposium this last year with one of our guests who was actively an Apollo scientist. That's the fact that despite how many times we go up, all right, everybody has their own way of going up. Right. And everybody gets there a slightly different way. Everybody has a slightly different twist on the technology. And even when you're talking about having astronauts that are now stranded in space,
right,
they can't use the spacesuit that they went up with on their way back because, well, let's just make it nice in English so people understand. The USB connector doesn't fit. It's not the right it's not the right compatible connector, and quite literally, like the umbilicals, the life support systems, none of these things are cross compatible. You cannot take a communication unit from a Boeing Starliner and put it into a Dragon capsule.
That's correct, and they're not going to make. We have the universal docking system, which for ISS is obviously a situation because Russia and whoever wants to dock. But it doesn't work with the suits.
Why not? And that's my question at this point. Good God, man. We have been... I was born in 75 when we crashed the first Skylab. All right?
Right.
When we lost the first station. And yes, since that point, since we first started docking with Russians, we have had a universal, this is your port. If you are going to space, make your port like this so you can come say hi to us.
Apollo Soyuz is what started that universal docking thought process of, hey, there's more to this of rescuing people in space. Luckily at this point everyone uses the same docking thing, so getting there. But obviously with the suits, a lot of people don't understand that the suits are integrated part of Dragon. They're an integrated part of Starliner. So when you put that suit on, you're not just sitting in a seat independent of the craft. You are physically plugged in. All of your medical, everything, your air, your communications, everything comes through the suit. And the suit is custom. Each suit is made specifically for the person that's wearing it. And so they can't just go to a shelf and pull off, something and hand it to somebody. So it's a little bit different than that. But yeah, that's, they're going to get their SpaceX suits, which look pretty cool. I kind of like them.
But let's get into that for a minute, because I mean, quite literally what you're talking about here is I'm bringing up the Boeing website right now for the spacesuit and everything else so we can show it on screen while we talk about it. And these are amazing pieces of technology. You're talking, integrated heads-up displays, all kinds of things, of course. Which you want, because it does give you vitals, things like that, directly in front of you all the time. But at the same token, like, man, I can imagine how many models of this we're going to have rolling around. Why would we not want to universalize something like that amongst space agencies, amongst everybody, like it, or at least the fact of you could have whatever connectors you want in there, whatever things you want, but here's the connector that you're using.
Right. I kind of agree with that. I think there could be more of a universal adapters that would do that, or some form of if your suit has a special need for a certain type of adapter. I mean, just like when you and I are hooking up audio equipment, audio visual, we can look at a plug and know immediately what it is. And what, we can make work with it. I mean, we think out of the box many times when a certain cable is not going to work, and we have to get an adapter, get a male to a female to go over to this thing, we'll plug it into this junction box, and then we'll do it. Another cable will come out. So the bigger picture with all of that is where would it end? And the other companies, in some ways, it would be said that it stymies a little bit of innovation. Sure. And that you have to go back into some government regulation, and you have to do this. And when the government regulates things too much, then we see the problems. That's where SpaceX has had the amazing success that they've had, is that they don't have that issue. If something doesn't, they'll launch a rocket just to see if it'll work. They literally, that's how they do it. They launch the rocket. They go through testing and all this other stuff that they have to do. But when they launch the rocket, they even tell you, we don't expect to get to space on the first launch of Starship. And on the second launch, we don't think we're going to be able to get this to orbit. I mean, there's all kinds of different things that come up, but the data that they get back is what they're looking for. And it's pretty much across the board. I think what's going to happen is this. Obviously, every time something like this happens, there's some form of formal investigation. There will be some sort of oversight. The next time that they're put in for a contract, the senators that are looking at, whoever approves it, the Senate Appropriations Committee or House Select Committee and what have you, as they look at these things, they are going to go, you know what? Not this time. Maybe let's swing that bar over to someone else. And I don't necessarily think that someone else should be SpaceX. I mean, SpaceX is going to get overloaded themselves. And we'll see companies like Blue Origin, which are struggling to get, Virgin Galactic, they had their own issues, and they're kind of in and out of the game, so to speak. I mean, you had the Strato launcher that was a very unique idea. Or not unique necessarily, but it was a neat idea to be able to launch from an aircraft to some degree. Yeah. But at the same time, it's almost like, it's like when people watch the Blue Origin launch and they see it not actually go into orbit and whatever, it just goes up and down. Your mind goes, that's kind of cool. The first couple of them, you're like, oh, that's cool. When Bill Shatner goes up, that's kind of cool. But then your mind is like, man, aren't they supposed to be getting further along in their game, so to speak?
Shouldn't we be further along? Is the
question? And that's where, once they awarded those contracts for the moon landing and whatnot, and Blue Origin got their contract, and SpaceX and everybody's got their portion of how they're going to piece this together inside the Artemis program as well. I mean, that there is kind of what you're talking about. That is where multiple companies are going to be putting something together to get us back to the moon on a more permanent basis. It's taking longer this time than it did, obviously, the first time. And people think, well, you would think we have more technology now. And once they gave the go, I mean, when JFK made that speech, we will land a man on the moon and bring him safely back to the Earth. We were on there by the end of the decade, as he requested. That was amazing. Can you imagine being alive at that time and seeing that speech? And then fast forward to today, we have massive technology leaps since then. And you think that, well, if they did it in 7 years or whatever back then, we should be able to do it in 2 or 3 now. But it doesn't work that way. Getting to space is hard. It's not an easy thing to do. I've been to, over 200 launches, and And some of the launches had, things that I put together or helped design and what have you on it. I was at NROL 55, and that was the first time I had, well, I can't say what it was, obviously, but the first time I had something on a launch. I was almost going to say what it was. But, you look at this from the standpoint that the good news is that it's not Russia. It's not one entity that's contracted to do this. Once the private sector got involved in the game, it does give us some wiggle room. We don't. Whenever they said these astronauts were stranded, I was saying I immediately thought they're nowhere near stranded. We have a Soyuz capsule that's attached to the ISS 24/7. It's just there. I mean, that's your go-to to come back on. It wouldn't be my choice. I would rather have a Dragon permanently attached to it, but that's been there for a while. And that is amazing that we still have that relationship with Russia when it comes to, the space aspect of it, but everything else has gone to kaput. So you've got several companies that are vying to do what's necessary to get us to the moon, to get us into orbit and all these other things. And then you have Boeing down here essentially screwing up and destroying themselves. I mean, it's not a good thing. You to the point where you start to wonder, is someone inside Boeing, or is it indicative of the management style or techniques that are going on there? Is it almost like a conspiracy theory could be born, where someone would say someone came in to destroy Boeing and systematically went through the process of putting the wrong people in the wrong positions, and the rest is history. I mean, that has happened so many times.
But that would be that. I'm not going to say the conspiracy theories don't exist. They absolutely exist. Otherwise, people wouldn't be in prison for conspiracy.
Right.
But I don't know. That is a far.
Yeah, that'd be a stretch.
That's a far-reaching plan.
Yeah. So if you have that on one side, and then way on the other side, you have a company that is truly just struggling. They've had a string of bad luck and whatnot. The truth is always somewhere in the middle, and I don't think the truth leans toward the conspiracy side. I always call them spicy acorns. I don't see that as a viable possibility. But what I do see is that if that many whistleblowers have come forward, this problem is much larger than we can probably fathom right now, because neither you or I have probably read all the reports from all the whistleblowers. I know I haven't. And as such, just in the ones I've read, and then when you get to the point where you're reading about whistleblowers that have been unalived, either through suspicious circumstances. I think with Boeing's case, we're up to, 2 people now that is questionable.
One of them died from very rapid onset bacterial infection. The other one died from what has been called a self-inflicted gunshot wound.
Yeah, and one of those was about to go into a deposition. I think it was like Wednesday, and that Saturday is supposed to go back in for a follow-up deposition on the previous testimony that he had given, because his testimony during his first deposition was so unbelievable. The people taking the deposition just said, "Oh my God, what have we unraveled here? We're going to have to take some time to regroup to even know what questions to ask." Yeah. So they regrouped. As they were doing that, in between that time frame, this person is no longer with us, and you have to wonder, is that by design or not? I mean, obviously that would be a conspiracy too. I don't like going down the conspiracy path either. But it does beg the question, if you're about to go in to lay some landmark deposition about a company that is worth as much as Boeing is, then the question has to cross your mind.
It's got to be willing to, and it's not necessarily, it's not about giving that slice of the pie a whole bunch of credence, but you got to give it a slice of the pie. It's got to be in there. I can't think of any investigator who would be looking into the criminal charges against people and wouldn't consider that even a far-flung possibility. If it's a far-flung possibility, it's still a possibility and something that needs to be followed up and looked into.
Right, and that's why I do the types of investigations that I do. When I'm hired, people don't announce that I'm hired. I work in the shadows like I'm comfortable there. That's where I like to be. That's kind of where I was for a little while in Vegas, but in some other areas, that's the comfort zone. And when you go in, just like I mentioned the case that I'm working on right now I talked to you about it earlier, you're trying to find connections to certain organizations that if they knew you were doing an investigation on them that may tie the two together, you're going to have an issue. These are large dollar amounts and situations that bring up those types of people that would take care of that individual that's investigating them. So you have to be very careful. But even so, I mean, this is getting kind of off the beaten path here a little bit. And as you circle back, these situations have to have been questioned, and because the perception or the persistence of the issue is still there and more whistleblowers are coming forward, then the problems are probably 10 times what we're hearing. And that's what's scary. And when it comes to, we're not talking about some company that's making, speakers or amplifiers for your home and where we're talking about a company that the most feared thing you can do in the world as a civilian without thinking of military things or whatever is to fly in a plane. Even though it's the safest method of transportation, it is the scariest thing for someone to do, especially on their first time. Because your thought is if this goes down, that's it. And when you hear about some of the parts that are being, the non-conforming parts being placed into the planes and some of these stories that we're hearing about, doors flying off, like I said, planes dipping down to 500 feet, all these weird things that they may be isolated incidences and maybe whatnot. But when you start to connect the dots and you go, wow, this whistleblower told us about this particular part that came from this particular supplier that was out of spec, and yet they used it anyway, that's a problem. And how many planes did they use that on? And is that part in a detrimental part of the plane that if it fails, it's going to cause a catastrophe?
Yeah, well, and I just popped up the article about the 777 that dropped 6,000 feet, killing a person. And that's just it. Those are massive failures on behalf of, and it's not like they're making hamburgers or something like that.
No, exactly. I mean, I've been in a plane when it's ran off the runway. I've been in a plane when it's dropped a ridiculous amount of feet. I've been in aircraft when the turbulence was so bad that you don't want to look out the window and look at the wing. It's just like, holy crap, that wing is still on this plane. It's amazing. And, sometimes you get used to it. I remember holding this old lady's hand when the very bad turbulence started when I went to Hawaii one time, and she just grabbed my arm and I just held her hand the whole time. And I started laughing a little bit because I kind of weirded out myself. It was watching everybody's response. I started laughing. I thought that might calm people down, but it really didn't. Shouldn't have done that. But I was used to it, and I was thinking, it'll be fine, whatever. And we hit something, and all the compartments where your baggage comes out. And I can tell you a funny story offline about what happened to this one lady's suitcase. But things are happening. These people are being affected, and the end result. When people say something like, "Well, the plane didn't crash," but this is. But not the point. The point is the plane could have, especially if you didn't have a good enough captain. Luckily, our captains on almost all of our commercial airliners, to a large percentage, are former military pilots who have a large amount of hours flying aircraft in intense situations. And, you got to put your hats off to a lot of these guys there. They do a tremendous job and handle some adverse situations.
Absolutely.
And then they have to deal with the Karens on the planes.
Yeah. Well, and you know, when it comes to these things, once again, in the last 10 minutes or so, the issue that you have is when these contracts are given to things like Boeing Starliner, and you know, there were also contracts given to Blue Origin and things like that. It was basically a divided contract. So it was a kind of a divide and conquer aspect. Okay, we're going to fund a few of you guys and see who can do what.
Right.
But how do we prevent this from, once again, stymieing creation? How do we make sure that these contractors that we do divvy that pot up amongst, are at least using some kind of universal stuff that can be cross compatible between them. I think the in the 40s and 50s there were only a couple of contractors out there that were really doing stuff. And even today, when you think of contractors, you think of Northrop Grumman, which is the largest contractor, and then you think of, I mean, a lot of people don't think, if I would ask you what is the largest military government contractor, most people won't roll off their tongue Northrop Grumman. Yeah.
It's a company we don't hear about. We hear about Lockheed Martin because of all the crazy stuff that they do with Skunk Works and whatnot. But we don't think about Northrop Grumman. But when you look at some of these companies, your mind starts to wonder, is this company going to allow the type of oversight that I think should be implemented to prevent this kind of stuff? I mean, you're looking for, what would prevent this from happening again in the future? You can't prevent something necessarily, but you can reduce the percentage of that situation happening. Think about Morton Thiokol when the shuttle exploded, and that guy, the engineer, was on the phone telling them, "Hey, we've never launched in a temperature like this. I'm concerned about the O-ring on the SRB, the solid rocket booster." That story is a classic indicator of what you and I are talking about right now. That's what we are trying to prevent. So what should be in every company is that no matter who comes, there should be an open policy that if you have an issue with the safety of a product that we're making, there's an open door policy. You come in and you talk, and they actually do something. And that was, grandfathered into the whistleblower program, which is closer to what should be done. But I know two whistleblowers personally. I know one of them was so retaliated against that they no longer can not only work where they were working, they don't even want to work in the industry or anything to do with it, and they moved 3,000 miles away. I said it's almost like you want to put them in a witness protection program, but and the other one, a little bit different story, a little bit lower scale of what happened. But you start to see it from the inside. You go, wow, the whistleblower program isn't exactly what is promised. So they need to clean that up a little bit. They need to make it more open. I mean, if you go, I don't know if you've ever been to SpaceX in Hawthorne or in Boca Chica, but if you get a chance, go there, talk to the employees, and you will find out that their policy of anything that they do is so open that anyone can go to Elon, or anyone can go to whoever is the head of their project and express their concerns. That's the way it should be everywhere.
Yeah.
And when you talk about a company as old as Boeing that handles most of the military contracts and whatnot, you can see the difference of how the employees are. It's almost like SpaceX is the Google of the space race, right? And Boeing, your mind just thinks, okay, if Google was going to launch rockets, well, I guess it is Elon Musk, has something to do with that. But if Google's going to launch rockets, you would think SpaceX would be the Google of it, and Boeing would be the more archaic of the two. And now we're seeing what happens when that occurs. I mean, the technology is cool, but unfortunately, it's not working as it was supposed to. And that's part of the game. They may be out of the game for long.
And that's just it. They had the twice delayed launch. Then once they got people up there, had a problem and wondered why people didn't want to ride home. You know?
Yeah. And that's where you strike that line. You put the line there and say, look, once we get to the manned part of the missions, I mean, SpaceX can launch as many Starliners as they want, starships rather, as they want, and blow them up and have them land wherever and whatever they want to do. That's Elon's money, no big deal. But once it gets to the part where you're putting people on it, it better be tried and true. Like the Falcon didn't launch a person until many years into the Falcon program.
Yep.
And then when the Dragon I actually parked right by they had the Dragon building in Hawthorne. And when I came into the SpaceX in Hawthorne, I walked through there. So I saw a Dragon capsule essentially being built. And I was amazed at how clean the place was. I didn't walk in through a clean room, so this was like a storage area section, but I was just amazed at how everything was set up. And then when I had to do something there for a couple of days, and in talking to the employees, it was like a breath of fresh air. It was just like I could say anything. They would openly talk to me about everything.
That's awesome.
And it is, and that's. I don't think I would do that. I don't think that would happen at Boeing. To be honest with you, I don't think they would have that open policy.
Well, and I think of course a lot of that has to do with the company itself. I mean, say what you want about Elon Musk, folks. The one thing I have always said is find me another industrialist out there who's like, let's leave the patents open to the public.
Yeah, amazing, huh? I mean, that says something.
It does say something, at least about the advancement of science and what the end goal is. And it seems much more like the end goal is what can we all do together to make this happen. And don't get me wrong, he's a blowhard. He's got his crazy ways. But
it works. He's been pressed on a lot of issues. He's been pressed to the wall about how he is, but he when you see him in one interview, it's one thing, but when you see him in multiple interviews, he is genuinely sincere about getting to Mars for the reason he says it is. It's not that he doesn't necessarily want to be the richest man in the world. That wasn't his goal. His goal was to do certain things, and he saw that he could probably put it together and did it. And he's obviously doing it. But there may be a point 5 years down the road where they may have some failures in a row, and we'll be having the same conversation about SpaceX. And I hope that doesn't happen.
Yeah, absolutely. Mike, thank you so much as always for the time. It's always great chatting with you. Always great catching up and talking about these current issues going on in our society technologically, things like that. It's you always have such a finger on the pulse of things going on. Where can people go to catch up and keep up with 5x5 News? Where can they go to follow you? All that kind of good stuff.
You can follow me by name currently on TikTok as well. I'm pretty much going to incorporate some lives into that region a little bit and explore that. YouTube and under 5x5 News, which you see the logo on the screen there. Yep. And also on X. I almost said Twitter, but I can't get the Twitter out. So Twitter or X or however you like to you refer to it, it'll also be under 5x5 News.
All right. Well, Mike, thank you so much as always, bud. I greatly appreciate it. Greatly appreciate the time. Too, hold the line while we close things out. While you are online following Mike Turber and 5x5 News on YouTube and X and TikTok, all that kind of stuff, make sure to stop on by Curious Realm. CuriousRealm.com is where you can like, follow, subscribe, share. That is where you can find all the episodes. That is where you can find your copy of the Field Observation and Encounter Log by Curious Research, our new endeavor to help paranormal researchers shake the hands of science and prepare their data for such. So stop on by and check that out, folks. Thank you so much for your open hearts, your open minds. That is what makes the conversation. And without the conversation, humanity does not march forward. So remember, everybody, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and stay curious. We'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye. Thank you for tuning into this episode of The Curious Realm. Stay tuned for more guests, forbidden topics, and hidden truths. Follow us on social media by searching Curious Realm. To download the official Curious Realm app and view the Knowledge Vault, or become a sponsor of Curious Realm, visit our website at curiousrealm.com. Curious Realm is available on your favorite podcast and video services, curiousrealm.com, as well as KGRA Radio, APRTV, and the official Curious Realm app for Roku devices. Curious Realm is a proud member of the Ground Zero Media and Aftermath Media family of podcasts. For more great shows and members-only content, visit aftermath.media today. Thanks for listening. Stay curious, and remember, the other side is always watching.